Hi, welcome back to Core Growth Strategies, Positivity, and Success Stories. I'm so excited and honored to have my next guest join me today. Living with a positive mindset, staying in the drama-free zone, and bringing emotional intelligence into the forefront of our lives, my guest has personally transformed my life into living with an abundant mindset. My mentor, my friend, my EQ guru, Jen Gruber, and I discuss how to utilize emotional intelligence to de-stress during the holidays. Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is really exciting to have you on my show because of the simple fact that without you, I wouldn't be having a show right now.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that. That's so funny when you think about that.
I do. I mean, you really are the queen of emotional intelligence. And just by studying under you, it really changed my life. And it's so exciting to be able now share that with everybody else.
No, I know. Well, you're killing it, teaching it and opening more and more doors. I mean, we need so many people spreading the word and encouraging emotional intelligence. It just makes life so much better. As you know, it makes everybody happier and have more peace and more harmony in their lives, more success, and just overall happiness. And unfortunately, the world is overall constantly believing that life is painful, and it doesn't have to be so painful. Most, not all, but most pain is self-inflicted pain by our expectations of others, our disappointment of things, or getting mad at somebody for something that is completely silly anyway. So just embracing these principles can really transform people's lives, which is why I love it so much.
Yeah, and it absolutely now more so because I know there's always more tension when the holidays are around us, among us.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know why, it's supposed to be a happy time, yet so many people have more stress and more anxiety. And a lot of it, I believe, is because they are not, clearing up these past issues that they've had with other people.
Yeah. I mean, I remember it for myself because I had such a dysfunctional childhood, and my dad came from a very emotionally unavailable family. So he was emotionally unavailable, and every year during the holidays, I would have this expectation of him to be even more than I expected of him every other day, to be this like loving, doting dad, which was not possible. And I would find myself also, as I got older in my 20s, going home for Christmas and leaving days later feeling literally like I had mono from the energetic depletion and the stress that I was putting on myself, by the way, self-inflicted pain, because of my expectations and because I was allowing myself to be disappointed by the impossible. And I think that's why there is so much stress at the holidays. Once I changed my expectations of my dad being somebody that he's incapable of being and just being who he is and accepting it, all of that energetic depletion went away. And my time there was just what it was versus wanting it to force it to be something different. And I think that that's where a lot of the cycle of pain comes in during the holidays.
That is so true, because a lot of times I'll hear from people saying, well, I do expect family members to act a certain way. I do expect that it's Thanksgiving, that families should be together, yet not everybody has those same expectations. And then when you don't get yours, you get more upset.
Yeah. Well, we as a society believe that our expectations should be met by other people. And that's where one of the biggest lessons of emotional intelligence is that that's not right, actually. Our expectations for our life, what we desire for our life, can be met because we're in control of that. But we can't control other people and who they are. I mean, that's actually one of the biggest forms of disrespect to other people, is to expect them to be like us, think like us, act like us. People have to be who they are on their own path, and we can't control that. We can control what we do, but we can't control what other people do. And that's too often what people are trying to do, is control other people. And when we can let go of the fact that we can't control other people, and we can let go of the fact that people are who they are, where they are. And the sooner we can accept that, the faster we can heal, the faster we can be happy and not affected by other people. And, the only expectations that we should hold other people accountable for are the ones that we openly discuss and openly agree upon. And unless you're openly discussing your expectations and the other parties involved are openly agreeing upon those expectations, we have no right to be mad at another person, which I know sounds so mind-blowing to people when they're hearing this for the first time and their egos are like tripping, like, what? No, my sister does this, or my brother does that, and that's not right. And all these stories that are going on in our minds, we just keep running and running with. And you can keep running with them, but you'll keep making yourself miserable.
Yeah, and that's true, because a lot of people think their way is the right way all the time. And even those that are willing to accept each other for their differences, there's people that are just unwilling to accept or change in any manner.
Yeah. So, I always say detox the drainers in your life and increase the enhancers, but there's still family members and work environments we can't escape from. So all we need to do is change our expectations of those experiences. Going back to my childhood experiences, I expected my dad, which I did back in the day, to give me this big loving hug and smother me with adoration and appreciation. I'd be let down because it's just not possible. He's not capable of that. And the sooner I learned to actually have empathy for who he is and where he is, and he's 85 now and he's softened a lot in the last few years, but he wasn't emotionally available because he was never given the skills to be. He was very gruff. He was very tough on me. And I found out later in life he was tough on me because he thought his belief system was that was going to force me to be better, which knowing psychology is absolutely asinine, but the reality is that's what he believed. If I'm hard on her, I'll push her to do better and better and better. And so when I changed my beliefs and my expectations, I actually could shift from anger and resentment to empathy and compassion. Like, wow, this poor man never lived a life of inner peace. He never lived a life of kindness and empathy for others. And he'll never have the relationship with my brother and I like I have with my children because he can't even emotionally connect. Like, how sad is that? So you see, I shift from anger and disappointment and resentment to, wow, that's really sad. So now I'm not affected by it.
Yeah. And that takes time too. I think people need to realize that takes time, because it's painful when you want the best for your family. You want them to just get it the way you and I do. And watching them continuously make decisions to hurt themselves, it can be difficult to watch.
It absolutely can be, but people are on their own path. Yeah. And people are going to wake up when they want to wake up. And people will self-sabotage as much as they want to self-sabotage. And even if we give them the tools, even if we teach them, even if we talk them through it, if they're not ready to change, then they're not going to change. And that's probably the hardest thing with what you and I do for a living is we see people's potential. We see people's patterns. We see people self-sabotaging, and we can guide them. We can inspire them. We can inform them. We can educate them. But they have to choose to use the information and the tools and change the behaviors to change the outcomes. And we can't, it's that whole like, you lead a horse to water. We can only lead the horse to water, but we can't force them to drink it. And I know that is more so triggering when it's family members because we just wish everybody could see the way we see. But if we even say it like that, think about how ego-driven that statement is alone, right? So while we're living this lifestyle that's more conscious, it's still very judgmental and almost abusive to say, oh, well, somebody else is asleep, even though they are, to acknowledge, to just observe that they're asleep versus force their awakening is what's the hardest part, but the evolution of ourselves.
Yeah. And I think, coming from my own personal experience, I held on to anger and resentment for things that happened, decades ago. And when I finally learned, though, how to take accountability for my part in it and release those, self-limiting negative beliefs that were instilled upon me by other people, it became like an awakening. And I almost instantaneously just started to see how my life change more positively. The right people started coming into my life, the right experiences, and just overall more general happiness, which now my own family has been able to, take part in as well.
Yeah. So the majority of times we can kind of control a lot more of the environment we're in, right? So I only choose to spend my free time with positive, productive people. That's my choice, right? I stay away from people who are causing drama, who are gossiping, who are being mean, who are just negative. It's exhausting to me.
Yeah.
However, there's times I can't escape that. And so when we're in those environments, we can minimize how it's affecting us by how we're viewing it. So you just said take accountability. We all have accountability in those toxic experiences too, just for the mere fact that we're letting someone else control our happiness. We're participating in it, right? And so, and that to me is like the highest form of prison. Giving someone else control of your emotional state is a sense of your own slavery to your happiness. And so, one of the things that we can do proactively is try to go in with a new perspective. Try to go in with, I'm not going to be, we all have the people in our family that when they say something, we instantly are defensive, instantly assume wrongdoing. We instantly assume it's a dig. And if we go into those environments or experiences and not make it have that meaning, make it have the meaning of they're just ignorant. They're just unawake. They're just functioning at a level that they only know how to function at, and not make it about us, but kind of put it back on just where they're at. We can then engage differently. So instead of becoming defensive back, we could say, you know what? I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry that that's your truth. It's not the truth. It's not my truth. But I'm sorry you feel that way. And so we can start to have dialogues that don't get defensive, so we can diffuse the situation. We can go in trying to see different perspectives. And then we can also try to communicate in a way that is educating them. Like how I just said, I'm sorry that you feel that way. That might be your truth, but it's not the truth. That's an educational drop right there. Like I'm dropping a sense of wisdom on someone. Whether they get it or not, I don't know. Yeah. But saying that basically is saying to somebody a lesson of your truth is not the truth. It's just your truth. Your perspective is not the truth. It's just your perspective. And so it's trying to educate them along. And they might even get defensive in that moment, but they might think about it later. Like, what did she mean by that? My truth's not the truth. Yeah. Maybe for the first time ever in their lives, they're entertaining that notion. And so what I'll typically try to do in those experiences is before I go in, I take a very deep centered breath. One of my Reiki master friends always said, protect yourself, meditate and protect yourself in white light, like putting yourself in a bubble, because then if you're not going to let that energy depletion happen, which how it used to, I'm an empath, and I used to literally leave feeling like I had mono for days. And then going in with the intention of, I'm not going to let what anyone else says affect me. Okay. And I will use these opportunities to see through a different lens, and maybe use the opportunity to educate if I feel inspired to do it. It takes a little bit more effort and energy to educate. So educating by demeaning is not what I mean, by the way. Right. Educating by truly desiring to maybe shed light onto something is powerful. It takes patience. It really does take patience. My one good friend, Colleen, is the best in the world at it. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me how when everything is crazy, people are going crazy around her, she'll literally just say, so calm. Sorry you feel that way. we'll get that under control. I'll figure out how to fix that. She's so calm. And I'm always like, wow, like I think I know what I'm doing in this world, but she just can do it at a whole different level. And when she does it, she really diffuses the situation. And I also watch people sit back a little like, wow, it was really harsh, or wow, that was really mean. And then they do their own self-reflecting punishment, so to speak. If you really think about it, when you become defensive to another person, it's two walls coming up.
Yeah.
But if you say, I'm sorry that you feel that way, and I really love you, and I wish that we could communicate more effectively, or I'm really disappointed that you said that, but why don't we communicate about how we're seeing this? Because maybe we're seeing it from 2 points of view. So when you say to somebody, I'm mad at you, or become defensive to them, nothing's going to be resolved. But when you sit back and say, I want to open the lines of communication from a place of love and desire to understand, not to be right, but to understand the other person's point of view, then we can really resolve a lot more. And keeping in mind, we all make up stories. We all have stories from our childhood. We all have stories from things that our moms or dads did to us in life. And I say a lot of siblings have issues because they have this story about how their childhood looked. And then the other sibling has a totally different story about how the childhood looked and how the mom favored one or the dad didn't or did. And then if the brother and sister sit down and actually share their point of views, they're like, what?
Yeah.
What? Were we living in the same house even?
Yeah.
Because we're doing it so differently. And then you can see how silly it is that people are just assuming their perception is the truth.
Yeah. But one important note is to say, you're right. Sometimes when you're going into a discussion such as that, a lot of times the person with a negative mindset might be prepared to have a fight and get defensive. But when you come from a place of love, it gets shut down really quickly.
Totally. There's nowhere to go. It's literally like splashing water on a fire. Yeah. When you just shower someone with love, by the way, this is an ego statement, but for some people, they need the ego to win as they're transforming their belief system. So showering someone with love is winning, literally winning. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, no, I need to say my piece. I need to get my peace of mind. And it's like, no, because there is no winning that way. So if you really want to win, just douse them with love and you've just put out the fire and you actually won.
So going back to just the core of emotional intelligence, you said it before, and I totally agree with you. It's so important if we can start teaching our children at preschool age about EQ. And since I've been studying with you the last few years, I've really made an effort in doing so with Mateo. And, he's proof that it works. It really does. And if they could learn at a younger age, hopefully they could avoid a lot of this unnecessary drama that we as adults go through.
Yeah, it is so powerful because kids are born emotionally. We're all born emotionally intelligent. We're all born from a place of pure love. No judgment, no fears, and they're all projected on us in different stages of our lives from our parents, our school teachers, our grandparents, anyone who has influenced television even on our lives. And so we become less emotionally intelligent and less emotionally available as different pains happen in our lives. So we start to build walls and walls and walls and judgment and try and keep ourselves safe by hurting other people or keeping other people out. But children are so incredible when you teach them this. It's already part of who they are. It just keeps them from having to do too much unwinding when they're adults. And I even saw it the other day. My daughters are 14 now, so for anyone listening, 14-year-old twin girls in high school, and I would say I'm very lucky still at this point. I've not had the drama that I gave my mom, that's for sure. I have not really had much drama, but lately, what I'm noticing is their viewpoint of the world and what I as a parent is supposed to be doing for them is entitled, and entitlement is like one of the biggest pet peeves that I have.
Yeah.
And they have a very skewed perception of what my reality was at 14 when you get a job and you pay for certain things on your own once you have that job, like Starbucks, coffee, like not coffee, but you get these like tea things that I don't want to pay for. And so they've gotten a little bit just entitled in the way that they're asking things. And I'm trying to nip that in the bud. Yeah. And the other day I got very like short with my one daughter, and she goes, you know, Mom, there are better ways to say that. My God, you're totally right, Morgan. You're totally right.
I love it. I love it.
It's fun to watch them turn their emotional intelligence skills around on me. Yeah. As they're now becoming more self-actualized and being able to articulate these concepts that I've been programming them with. Yeah. One of the biggest programmings that I did with them is living in the drama-free zone. And I taught them that from very early on, from pretty much day one, because I live in a drama-free zone. And I knew that drama ensues girls inevitably in middle school. And I wanted them to be able to navigate that quickly. And it's really fun to see them as high school students, and they only surround themselves by good girls that don't cause drama. And I ask them about things going on in school, and they're, you know, I'm like, there's not any of this happening or that happening. And they're like, yeah, but not with us in our world, because we don't hang out with those people.
That's fantastic.
Win. Yeah. So the more we can, it is so important. If you're a parent, forget like how it applies to work. If you're a parent and you are not investing in learning emotional intelligence and mastering it, you are selling your children short. You are literally robbing them of an opportunity. And I find it to be one of the most important investments in not just my future, but in my children's future, and the mastery of it. I mean, here I am, they're 14. I've been teaching this for so long, and I still get tested. Yeah. But now they can turn it around for me and put the mirror up like, Mom, there's a better way to say that. And, I just believe every adult, especially if you're a parent, if you are not investing in learning emotional intelligence, you are literally robbing your family of an opportunity of self-actualization.
And that's true, because you need it for you too. Mateo just is going through an incident right now. He's 13 and he is on 2 basketball teams. The 2 coaches are completely opposite. One is very nurturing, builds team spirit, and encourages them to do well. The other one is all about the win. And, which, yes, winning's important in sports, I understand. However, there's never a kind word to any of his players. He's very rough on all of them, and he screams at them at every practice, and they practice so much. And it's just, I asked Mateos, did he ever say, hey, good job to any of you on the team? He goes, no. And this past Sunday, he got he had a breakdown, and I asked him, what's going on? And he just started crying. I hate basketball. I'm like, no, you don't. But I already knew what was going on, because he was able to communicate what's happening. And the sad part is all the other teammates on this team, it's a more advanced team, but he's only been playing a year. None of them speak to him, and he overhears them saying how he's, oh, Mateo sucks. Mateo's the weakest link. So it's very difficult now for him to go into that practice for an hour and a half and hear this constantly, where the coach isn't stopping the kids from saying it. He's not encouraging. Yeah. So being with the training I had and the stability and the foundation I have, I was able to really sit down with him for, a good solid hour, really discuss how to look at things in a different perspective, discussing how the kids are probably fearful of the coach themselves and trying to put the intention on him because he's the new kid. Look at the coach yelling at you, because it's not just Mateo, he's yelling at every player. So I said, Mateo, just look at it this way. When the coach yells at you, I know you hate it, but just think of it this way, like, you know what? He's paying attention to me. He knows I can do better, so he's trying to help me. And as long as there's no like personal name calling or anything derogatory, I will allow him to remain on this team for the simple fact that it gives him the opportunity to learn how to deal with another personality type, which we will continue to go through in our entire lives.
Yeah, it's a huge asset. I do believe that every coach should have to go through emotional intelligence
Absolutely.
training before they can damage another child. And there's a lot of coaches that damage children every day. So I will say that. However, you're right in the perspective of it's giving him an opportunity to learn how to manage other people's personalities, which is such a powerful skill set. And we do have to do it for the rest of our lives because we can't control other people's personalities. And so it is, and it's so great that you were able to see that there's an opportunity in every obstacle.
Yes.
And the opportunity in this obstacle is learning how to manage and deal with other people's behaviors and personalities and reframe it and see it differently and not make it about us, but just make it what it is. Even my daughters, they have a babysitting job where Madison, more so than Morgan, has trouble managing the children's personalities. And she gets so upset and she's like, I want to quit. And I'm like, no, you cannot quit because you need to figure this out. You need to learn how to manage these kids. They're kids. Forget kids. I mean, imagine what adults are going to do to you if you can't figure out how to manage this. And so there is an opportunity in that for sure. But a lot of times in this situation that you're talking about with Mateo, or even with my kids, parents want to stop. They want to have the child avoid all pain and stress, which is not good either at all, because it's a muscle of resiliency. And if a kid can't process stress, then when they become a young adult with a lot more stress, that's when we see depression on the rise in college students. We see suicide on the rise because we're overprotecting our kids and not giving them the opportunity to learn how to process pain, process stress, process disappointment. And I get it. I'm a parent. Like, I don't want to see my kids suffer. But at the same time, I want them to develop the skills that they need to become a resilient adult. And that's really ultimately what our job is. And, Madison said to me the other day that her friends aren't at 14 allowed to have jobs because their parents don't want them to be stressed. And I started cracking up laughing. And I was like,
we can't understand that.
I can't even wrap my head around it. Because the second I was 14, my dad was dropping me off to put in applications. And my childhood was a lot more stressful than what my children are encountering. And I was like, what? First of all, like, how much stress can a job at like Rita's Wood Rice put into somebody's life? And if you can't process that for 8 hours a week, then you have a problem. Like, then I have a problem as a parent. Like, I'm not going to. So I said to her, I want you to be stressed because I want you to learn how to process it. I want you to learn how to take deep breaths. I want you to learn how to meditate. I want you to learn how to reframe things. I want you to learn how to organize better so that you can feel less stressed. And a lot of times, when parents aren't understanding all these principles that we learn in emotional intelligence, they're just trying to have the child avoid it versus process it. Emotional resiliency is a gift.
Well, you're going to love this because, so that incident was Sunday. Monday, he has it's a double practice, and he asked to meditate prior to leaving. And I loved it. He's like, can we meditate? I'm like, yeah. So we meditated before he went to his practice, and you literally saw this stress level just go. He was able to manage it. We went to practice and he was fine. He's like, yeah, it was good. So he's learning how to cope with it himself now too.
Yes. And teaching meditation to kids is so valuable. My kids actually just told me that they have started in one of their classes, a mindfulness portion of the class where they stop and they meditate. And my one daughter doesn't have it. She's like, wait, you get to nap? Wait,
Love it.
She's not napping and she's meditating with Madison. Like, some people do fall asleep, but nonetheless, I love that they're finally including these conversations in school to understand the value of when Morgan had Lyme disease, her anxiety, because it attacks her central nervous system, was off the charts. And meditation was one of the most critical things we had to implement for her to get her life back on track. And I know anxiety is super high in schools. Yeah. And I know that the guidance counselor, who was Morgan's guidance counselor, really worked closely with us. So if you have a child who has anxiety or seems to be struggling processing stress, meditation is one of the most simple things that you can add into as a skill set or a tool. And getting guidance counselors involved in that. But the guidance counselor allowed Morgan, when needed, not abusively, but when needed, to sometimes remove herself and go to the guidance counselor's office and put some earbuds in for 10, 15, 20 minutes, regroup, and then go back. And it was really very helpful for her.
I know you're running short of time, but I want you to address quickly your thoughts, because, I've been doing work with schools, and a lot of schools are still not open to, emotional intelligence in regards, the number one thing they'll complain about is the budget. But aside from that, you've said before, and I completely agree, where, the emotional well-being of our children is more important than academics. Could you address that?
Yeah, by far. Well, I just posted an article today that the most successful people are emotionally intelligent people. They make it's actually a case study done. Emotionally intelligent people make more money. All right. So if we're sending our kids, most people are sending their kids to school to have an upper hand in life, to be more successful, then why aren't we teaching true success skills in schools? Yeah. We're really not. Unfortunately, some schools are, more the private schools. But as a whole, my kids are still reading books that I read when I was a kid, or they're learning algebra still, which I tell my kids is absolutely ridiculous, that they're learning algebra instead of how to utilize technology platforms to actually create things that are needed in the world today. Anyway, emotional well-being is the foundation of all success. And that should be the first thing that we're teaching, how to be the best version of yourself. That's what school should be about. Not like, how do I get really high SATs? But how do I be the most expansive version of myself? School is meant, and I think we've completely lost sight of this, school is meant to optimize people's potential, not just aptitude, potential in all aspects of who they are, by learning to control their mindset, by learning how nutrition literally can help their brain function at a high level or completely deplete how their brains function. We really do need more well-rounded educational programs that start with the person inside out. And learning these skill sets of being the best version of themselves makes all the other academics easy. But here we are, like, shoving all this content down our kids' brains. And then teachers, unknowingly, I believe it's not intentional, but it's ignorance, giving them candy in the middle of a workday to give them a praise or a reward. And it's like, now you've just shoved all this information in their brain, and then you give them candy, which makes them actually not as smart. The chemical reaction you just did to their brain dumbed them down. So there's so much illogical things happening right now in our schools that we really do need to be advocates for, knowing what we know. And, there is a lot of movement around these anti-bullying missions. What a lot of schools, unfortunately, are doing is hiring anti-bully messengers that are not focused on building the kids from inside out. They're focusing on the problem instead of the solution. So whatever you focus on expands. So if you keep talking about bullying, that will continue to expand. But if you talk about, how do we all be the best version of ourselves? How do we become kind, compassionate, empathetic human beings? How do we process our pain when somebody else is mean? How do we learn to rationalize hurt people? Then you've solved the bullying problem, but in a way that's building people up from the inside out versus just focusing on a problem and beating it down.
Perfectly said. Well, thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, we could go on this topic for hours on end.
Forever. Literally.
And have a fabulous day. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone.